Reporting from Jerusalem for EndTimes.com, this is Brian Schrauger. It might seem like you missed a Christmas report from Israel, but you didn't. In fact, today, 7 January 2025, is Christmas. Well, for about half of Christian residents in Israel it is. Roughly half of all Christians here are Greek or Armenian Orthodox. Like all Eastern Orthodox churches, they strictly adhere to the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian one used by most of the world. For them, that makes Christmas today. So, Merry Christmas. For Christians who do not live in Israel, the idea of celebrating Christmas here, especially in Bethlehem, seems like it would be perfect. It isn't. Yes, the Church of the Nativity is here, built directly on top of the place where Jesus was born, and there is an entire area in the center of Bethlehem called Manger Square. Unfortunately, two things spoil Christmas here. One is the Islamic narrative that while Jesus was born in Bethlehem, he's only a prophet, second fiddle to the greatest prophet Muhammad. Islam insists he was not born from a virgin, is not the Son of God, and was not resurrected from the dead. That's why most Christmas seasons in Bethlehem are celebrated with decorations depicting Santa Claus, angels, and decorated trees. Islam has no tolerance for any messaging of Jesus as God's Son, sent to redeem the world from sin by his sacrificial death and resurrection. The other thing that spoils Christmas in Bethlehem, and every place else in Israel, is a narrative that exploded like a weed in the early 2000s. Called liberation theology, it proclaims Jesus' birth, life, death, and resurrection are a message of liberation from the sins of economic and political oppression imposed by so-called colonialists who stole the land from its indigenous people. In the United States, this somewhat less intense narrative is applied to European colonialists who stole the land from a slew of native Indian tribes. In Bethlehem, it is the very intense and ubiquitous message that Jews stole the land from indigenous Arab Palestinians. Of course, history completely disproves this message, but for many, if not most, Palestinian Christians, especially Palestinian evangelicals, this is the gospel. The particular strain of liberation theology here is called Christian Palestinianism. Since 2010, it has been injected into the arterial vein of Western evangelicalism by a conference in Bethlehem called Christ at the Checkpoint. What is Christian Palestinianism? Why has it taken root here? Why is it exploding like a virus among Christians in the West, including evangelicals? To help us answer these questions, today we are meeting up with Dexter Van Zile. Dexter is a good friend and one of the smartest people I have ever met. Almost 11 years ago, we were accidentally joined up as two Daniels in the lion's den of a Christ at the Checkpoint conference in Bethlehem. More on that in our conversation. For 16 years, Dexter worked for CAMRA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis, where he played a major role in countering misinformation broadcast into Western churches by Palestinian Christians. He also refuted anti-Semitic propaganda broadcast by white nationalists and their allies in the U.S. His articles have appeared in the Jerusalem Post, the Boston Globe, Jewish Political Studies Review, the Allgemeiner, and the Jewish News Syndicate. He has also authored numerous academic studies and book chapters about Christian anti-Zionism. About 3 years ago, Dexter moved to the Middle East Forum, where he serves today as the managing editor of its publication called Focus on Western Islamism. Join me as together, over the internet, we meet up with Dexter Van Zile.
Hi, Dexter.
Hey,
Great to see you. Long time, man. You and I met, I was just thinking about this, you and I met almost 11 years ago. Technically 10, but I think in February, March, it will be 11 years when I showed up at the Christ at the Checkpoint conference in Bethlehem and was so grateful to find you there. I knew about you, but I felt like I was Daniel walking into the lion's den. At least there were two Daniels on that day. Yeah, that was a real blessing to me. You and I know each other well, but I'm sure that many viewers don't know you. So would you please just take a minute to introduce yourself? Tell us what you've done, what you do.
Okay, sure. In 2005, I basically put my hand in the wood chipper, so to speak. That's really what I call it. And the same wood chipper that you've been basically inhabiting for the past couple of decades. I started work at an organization called the David Project, which basically fought against anti-Zionism on college campuses. And they said, Dexter, do you want to fight boycott, divestment, and sanctions in liberal Protestant churches? Because I was a member of the United Church of Christ at the time. And I said, yeah, of course. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And then I went to the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis, where I wrote about Christian anti-Zionism and anti-Israel propaganda, mostly from mainline Protestant churches in the United States, but every once in a while from Catholic churches here in the United States, and also sometimes institutions like the World Council of Churches and publications like Christian Century. And so I did that. And then in 2012, I went to my first Christ at the Checkpoint conference. And it was from 2012 through 2018, you and I were basically thick as thieves. And I'm going to tell the listeners one story. At one point, we were sitting in the audience at a pre-conference event. I asked a question, and you were sitting right next to me of one of the speakers. I think he was an employee of maybe the World Council of Churches or some other international ecumenical organization. We won't give his name. He was an Israeli citizen, a Palestinian Christian that basically made his living dumping on the country that basically kept him safe from oppression. And so I raised my hand and I said, and he was given a history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, a very distorted one. And I said, so are the Palestinians ever going to come to grips with the legacy of Hajj Ahmed al-Hussein? And the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem that cooperated, and he said, well, why would they have to do that? And I said, well, he cooperated with the Nazis. And he said, he said something to the effect that, well, that didn't happen. And he was sitting right next to me, and we both just laughed. And two people from the Velos Project, Luke Moon and Robert Nicholson came up to me, and they said, Dexter, you just earned your salary for the entire year. And I laughed, but it was kind of true. And so I did that. And the big work that we did was to basically highlight the narrative offered by Palestinian Christians about the evils of the Jewish state. Because if you were a Christian living in a Muslim majority environment, you basically have to toe the line. And the Christians living in the West Bank essentially relied on the Palestinian Authority to keep them safe from more radical elements in the society. So they had to basically take an anti-Israel line. And that was a story that I've been telling for years. And I would document the problems, the things that they said that weren't true. And then and it was good work and it was necessary work, but at a certain point, it became evident that it wasn't enough. And in particular, in 2021, I was in downtown Boston covering an anti-Israel event organized by basically some local radicals. And they said they were being spied on. And I went up and introduced myself, to say, no, you're not being spied on. You know who I am. And within a few minutes, they had surrounded me, were spitting at me and yelling at me.
If you are not yet a subscriber to endtimes.com and would like to see the rest of this important report and others like it, I urge you to subscribe right now at the website endtimes.com. For only $7 a month, you will receive a wealth of information and insight from Jimmy Evans, Mark Hitchcock, and experts from around the world, including Israelis living right here in the Jewish state. Do yourself a favor. Sign up today. Then join me as together we consider the virus of so-called Christian Palestinianism that has infected almost all strains of Christianity in the West.